You know, they say your prom night is supposed to be magical. The night you've been dreaming about since you were little, watching movies where the girl gets her perfect dress and dances with her Prince Charming under twinkling lights. But what happens when the people who are supposed to love you most in this world decide to sabotage that dream? What happens when your own parents become the villains in your fairy tale? I'm Sarah, and I need to tell you about the night that changed everything between me and my family. The night I learned that sometimes the people who claim to love you are the ones who hurt you the most. And honestly, I'm still processing what happened, even months later. But I think sharing this story might help someone else who's going through something similar, because Lord knows I felt completely alone that night. It started about 2 months before prom. I was a senior at Westfield High, and like every other girl in my class, I was absolutely obsessed with finding the perfect dress. I'd been saving money from my part-time job at the local coffee shop for months, setting aside every tip, every extra dollar I could find. I had this vision in my head of this stunning blue dress that would make me feel like a princess, something that would make Jake, my boyfriend, just stop and stare when he saw me. My parents, though, they had different ideas. My mom, Linda, and my dad, Robert, they've always been what you'd call controlling. Not in the obvious way that makes people call child services, but in that subtle, manipulative way that makes you question your own sanity. They'd always justified their behavior by saying they were protecting me, that they knew what was best for me, that I was too young and naive to make my own decisions. When I first brought up prom, my mom's reaction was strange. She got this tight smile on her face, the kind she gets when she's pretending to be happy, but is actually planning something. "Oh, prom," she said, like the word left a bad taste in her mouth. Well, I suppose we should start thinking about that. But here's the thing that should have been my first red flag. Instead of being excited to go dress shopping with me, instead of asking about my plans or who I was going with, my mom seemed almost annoyed, like prom was this huge inconvenience that she had to deal with. My dad was even worse. He kept making these comments about how prom was a waste of money, how kids these days were too spoiled, how back in his day they didn't need all this fancy stuff to have fun. I tried to brush it off. I told myself they were just being practical, that they were worried about money. We weren't poor, but we weren't rich either. Dad worked as a mechanic. Mom was a secretary at the elementary school. They always talked about budgets and being responsible with money, so I figured that was all this was. But then things started getting weird, really weird. I remember the first time I brought home a dress to try on. It was this beautiful navy blue number from Macy's, nothing too expensive, but elegant and age-appropriate. I was so excited to show my parents. I came downstairs wearing it, expecting them to smile, to tell me how beautiful I looked, to maybe even get a little emotional seeing their daughter all grown up. Instead, my mom looked me up and down with this expression I'd never seen before. It was almost like disgust. "It's too tight," she said immediately. "You look inappropriate. Take it back." I was confused. The dress fit perfectly. It wasn't too tight. It wasn't too revealing. It was actually pretty conservative compared to what a lot of girls at my school were wearing. But when I tried to explain this to my mom, she just shook her head and walked away. "Your mother's right," my dad chimed in without even looking up from his newspaper. "You're not wearing that." I felt my heart sink. This wasn't how I'd imagined this moment going. I'd pictured my parents being proud, maybe even a little teary-eyed. Instead, I felt like I was being judged and found wanting. I returned the dress the next day and tried again. This time, I found something even more conservative, a black dress with sleeves that came down to my knees. Surely this would be acceptable, right? Wrong. "Black is too mature for you," my mom said when I showed her. "You're not going to a funeral." The third dress was rejected because it was too flashy. The fourth, because it was too expensive, even though it was on sale and cost less than the others. The fifth, because it made me look too old. By this point, I was getting desperate. Prom was only 3 weeks away, and I still didn't have a dress. All my friends had found their perfect dresses weeks ago and were posting photos on Instagram, talking about their hair and makeup appointments. I felt like I was being left behind, like my parents were deliberately sabotaging my prom experience. That's when I decided to take matters into my own hands. I had been saving money from my job, and I had enough to buy a really nice dress if I wanted to. So instead of going shopping with my mom, I went by myself one Saturday when my parents thought I was at work. I told my manager I needed to switch shifts, and I spent the day at the mall, determined to find something perfect. And I did find it. Oh my God, when I saw this dress, I knew it was the one. It was in this boutique I'd walked past 100 times, but never had the courage to enter. The dress was displayed in the window, and it was absolutely stunning. It was a deep emerald green, made of this flowing material that seemed to shimmer when it moved. It had a fitted bodice with delicate beading and a full skirt that made me feel like I was floating when I walked. The price tag made my eyes water, but I had just enough money if I used everything I'd saved. The saleswoman, this sweet older lady named Mrs. Chen, helped me try it on, and when I looked at myself in the mirror, I almost cried. I looked beautiful, not just pretty, but truly beautiful. The dress fit like it had been made for me, and the color made my eyes pop and my skin glow. "You look absolutely radiant, dear," Mrs. Chen said, and I could tell she meant it. "This dress was made for you." I bought it on the spot. I knew my parents would probably have something to say about it, but I figured once they saw how happy it made me, once they saw how beautiful I looked, they'd understand. They'd see that this wasn't just about a dress, it was about me feeling confident and beautiful on one of the most important nights of my teenage life. I was so naive. I hid the dress in my closet, planning to reveal it to my parents a few days before prom. I wanted to have my hair and makeup trial run first, so I could show them the complete look. I spent hours that week planning every detail, from my shoes to my jewelry to how I'd style my hair. The night before prom, I finally decided to show them. I put on the dress, did my hair in the style I'd been practicing, and put on a little makeup. I looked in the mirror and felt like a completely different person. I felt powerful, beautiful, confident. I felt like the version of myself I'd always wanted to be. I walked downstairs, my heart pounding with excitement. My parents were in the living room watching TV, and when they turned to look at me, I expected to see their faces light up with pride and joy. Instead, my mother's face went completely white, and then red with what I can only describe as rage. "Where did you get that dress?" she demanded, standing up so fast she knocked over her wine glass. I bought it," I stammered, suddenly feeling small and scared, despite how beautiful I'd felt just moments before. "How much did it cost?" my father asked, his voice deadly quiet. I told them, and I watched as their expressions went from angry to furious. "You spent all your savings on a dress?" my mother shrieked. "A dress you'll wear for one night? Do you have any idea how irresponsible that is?" "But Mom, it's prom," I said, my voice breaking. "It's important to me. I wanted to look beautiful." "You look ridiculous," she spat. "You look like you're trying too hard, like you're pretending to be someone you're not." Those words hit me like a physical blow. I felt tears starting to form in my eyes, but I tried to hold them back. I couldn't let them see me cry. I couldn't let them win. "I think I look beautiful," I said quietly, trying to keep my voice steady. "Well, you don't," my father said, not even looking at me. "You look like a little girl playing dress-up. Go take it off." I wanted to argue, wanted to stand up for myself, but I could see there was no point. They had made up their minds, and nothing I said was going to change them. I went back upstairs, took off the dress, and hung it carefully in my closet. I told myself that it didn't matter what they thought. Tomorrow night, I would wear my beautiful dress to prom, and I would feel like a princess, and their opinions wouldn't matter. But I should have known they wouldn't let it go that easily. The next morning, I woke up excited despite the previous night's drama. It was prom day, and nothing was going to ruin it for me. I had plans to get my hair done with my best friend Emma, and then we were going to do our makeup together at her house. Jake was going to pick me up at 6, and we were going to have dinner at this fancy restaurant downtown before heading to the dance. I spent the morning getting ready, taking a long bath, doing my nails, all the little things that made me feel pampered and special. Around noon, I went to my closet to check on my dress one more time to make sure it was perfect and ready. The closet was empty. I mean, not completely empty, but my dress was gone. The beautiful emerald green dress that had made me feel like a goddess was nowhere to be found. I searched through every hanger, looked on the floor, checked under my bed, thinking maybe it had fallen, but it was gone. Panic started to set in. I ran downstairs, still in my bathrobe, my heart racing. "Mom, Dad, where's my dress?" My mother was in the kitchen, calmly making lunch like nothing was wrong. She looked up at me with this innocent expression that I now know was completely fake. "What dress, honey?" "My prom dress, the green one. Where is it?" "Oh, that dress," she said, turning back to her sandwich. "I returned it this morning." I felt like the world stopped spinning. "You... what?" "I returned it to the store. I got most of your money back, though they did charge a restocking fee. But don't worry, I picked up a nice dress from Target for you to wear instead." I couldn't breathe. I literally couldn't breathe. She had returned my dress. My perfect, beautiful dress that I had saved for months to buy. She had taken it back without asking me, without even telling me. "How could you do that?" I whispered, and then louder. "How could you do that to me?" "I did it for your own good," she said, still not looking at me. "That dress was inappropriate and way too expensive. You'll thank me later." "Where is it? Where's the dress you bought?" She pointed to a Target bag on the counter. I opened it with shaking hands and pulled out the most horrible thing I'd ever seen. It was a dress, technically, but it was nothing like what I'd chosen. It was a shapeless, beige-colored thing that looked like it belonged on a 50-year-old woman, not a 17-year-old girl going to prom. "I'm not wearing this," I said, my voice shaking with rage and tears. "Yes, you are," my father said from the doorway, "or you're not going to prom at all." "You can't do this to me," I sobbed. "It's my prom. It's supposed to be special." "Life isn't all about special occasions and fancy dresses," my mother said, finally looking at me. "The sooner you learn that, the better off you'll be." I stood there in that kitchen, holding that awful dress, and I realized something that changed everything. My parents weren't trying to protect me or teach me responsibility. They were trying to humiliate me. They were trying to make sure I didn't shine, didn't feel beautiful, didn't have the confidence that comes from knowing you look amazing. But why? Why would parents want to do that to their own daughter? I think I knew the answer even then, but I wasn't ready to face it. The truth was, my parents had always been jealous of me. Not in the way that you'd expect from strangers, but in this sick, twisted way that some parents get when they see their children becoming independent, becoming their own people. They had controlled every aspect of my life for 17 years, and prom represented something they couldn't control. My transition into adulthood, my ability to make my own choices, my growing independence. And they couldn't stand it. I ran upstairs and locked myself in my room, sobbing hysterically. I called Emma and tried to explain what had happened, but I was crying so hard she could barely understand me. She came over immediately, took one look at the Target dress, and said exactly what I was thinking. "Oh, hell no. We're not letting them win." Emma, bless her heart, had a plan. Her older sister Rachel had graduated 2 years earlier and still had her prom dress, which happened to be almost exactly my size. It wasn't the green dress I'd fallen in love with, but it was beautiful. A deep purple gown with a sweetheart neckline and intricate beading on the bodice. "But what about your parents?" Emma asked. "They'll be furious." "Let them be furious," I said, surprising myself with how determined I sounded. "They want to play games? Fine. I can play games too." We spent the afternoon at Emma's house getting ready together like we'd planned. Rachel helped me into her dress, and when I looked in the mirror, I felt some of that magic returning. I didn't look exactly like I'd imagined, but I looked beautiful, and more importantly, I felt beautiful. Emma's mom did our makeup, and Rachel styled my hair into this gorgeous updo with little crystal pins scattered throughout. By the time we were finished, I looked like I could have stepped off the cover of a magazine. "Your parents are going to die when they see you," Emma said, grinning. "That's the point," I replied. Jake arrived at Emma's house to pick me up, and when he saw me, his face just lit up. "Sarah, you look absolutely incredible," he said, and I could tell he meant it. "You're going to be the most beautiful girl at prom." We took photos in Emma's backyard, and I felt like I was living in a dream. This was how prom was supposed to feel. Magical, special, perfect. But I knew I had to go home first. I had to face my parents and show them that they hadn't won, that they hadn't succeeded in breaking me. When Jake dropped me off at my house so I could get my purse and say goodbye to my parents, I walked through the front door with my head held high. My parents were waiting in the living room, probably expecting to see me in that horrible beige dress, looking defeated and humiliated. Instead, they saw me in a stunning purple gown, my hair perfect, my makeup flawless, looking like an absolute queen. The look on their faces was priceless. My mother's mouth actually fell open, and my father's eyes went wide with shock and, I think, a little bit of fear. "Where did you get that dress?" my mother demanded, her voice shaking with rage. "A friend lent it to me," I said calmly, "since mine mysteriously disappeared." "You take that off right now," she said, standing up. "You're wearing the dress I bought you, or you're not going anywhere." "Actually," I said, feeling braver than I ever had in my life, "I'm 18 in 2 months. I'm almost an adult, and I'm wearing this dress to prom whether you like it or not." My father started to say something, but I cut him off. "I want you both to know that what you did today was cruel and unnecessary. You took something that was important to me, something that made me happy, and you destroyed it just because you could. And I will never forget that." I grabbed my purse and headed for the door, but my mother grabbed my arm. "If you walk out that door in that dress, don't bother coming back tonight," she said, her voice low and threatening. I looked at her hand on my arm, and then I looked at her face. For the first time in my life, I saw her clearly. Not as my mother, not as someone who loved me, but as someone who was trying to control me, trying to keep me small and manageable. "Fine," I said, pulling my arm away. "Maybe I won't." And I walked out. Jake was waiting in the car, and when he saw my face, he knew something was wrong. "Everything okay?" he asked gently. "It is now," I said, and I meant it. Prom was everything I dreamed it would be. I danced with Jake, I laughed with my friends, I felt beautiful and confident and free. People kept complimenting my dress, telling me how gorgeous I looked, asking where I'd gotten it. I felt like I was glowing from the inside out. But the best part wasn't the dancing or the photos or even being crowned prom queen, which somehow happened and felt like the universe's way of telling me I'd made the right choice. The best part was the feeling of standing up for myself, of refusing to let someone else's insecurities and control issues dictate my happiness. I spent the night at Emma's house, and when I finally went home the next afternoon, my parents were waiting for me. They looked like they hadn't slept, and for a moment I thought they might actually apologize. Instead, my mother started yelling the moment I walked through the door. "How dare you embarrass us like that? How dare you disobey us and sneak around behind our backs?" "I didn't sneak around," I said quietly. "I made a choice, the same choice any normal parent would have wanted their daughter to make, to feel beautiful on prom night." "You looked ridiculous," she screamed. "Everyone was probably laughing at you." "Actually," I said, pulling out my phone, "I was crowned prom queen, and I got about 100 messages from people telling me how beautiful I looked. So no, I don't think anyone was laughing." The look on her face when I said that was almost worth everything I'd been through. She looked like I'd slapped her. My father, who had been quiet up until that point, finally spoke. "You're grounded for a month," he said. "No phone, no car, no going out with friends." "For what?" I asked. "For going to prom? For wearing a beautiful dress? For refusing to let you humiliate me?" "For disobeying us," my mother said. "For being disrespectful and ungrateful." That's when something inside me finally snapped. All the years of walking on eggshells, of trying to please them, of accepting their criticism and control, it all just broke apart. "You want to know what's disrespectful?" I said, my voice rising. "Returning your daughter's prom dress without asking her, buying her an ugly replacement and expecting her to be grateful, trying to sabotage one of the most important nights of her life because you can't stand the thought of her being happy and confident." "We were trying to teach you," my mother started. "No," I interrupted. "You were trying to control me. You were trying to keep me small and insecure because that's easier for you to handle than a daughter who knows her own worth." I went upstairs to my room and started packing a bag. I couldn't stay in that house anymore. I couldn't pretend that what they'd done was okay, that it was normal, that it was love. Emma's family let me stay with them for the rest of the school year. Her parents were horrified when they heard what had happened, and they made it clear that I was welcome in their home for as long as I needed. My parents tried to get me to come back, but only on their terms. They wanted me to apologize, to admit that I'd been wrong, to promise never to disobey them again. They wanted me to go back to being the compliant, controllable daughter I'd been before. But I couldn't do that anymore. I'd tasted freedom, and I'd learned what it felt like to stand up for myself. I'd learned that my happiness and self-worth were not negotiable. I graduated as valedictorian, got a full scholarship to college, and moved out of state. I thought maybe the distance would help our relationship, that time would heal the wounds that had been opened that prom night. But my parents saw my success as a betrayal. They saw my independence as a rejection of them. Instead of being proud of me, they seemed to resent me more with each accomplishment. It took me years of therapy to understand that what happened that night wasn't really about a dress. It was about control, about fear, about parents who were so threatened by their daughter's growing independence that they were willing to hurt her to maintain their power over her. I learned that there's a difference between parents who set boundaries out of love and parents who impose control out of fear. I learned that real love supports your growth, celebrates your happiness, and wants you to shine, not dim your light to make others feel more comfortable. The sad truth is, my relationship with my parents never recovered. We talk occasionally, but it's surface-level stuff. They've never apologized for what they did, never acknowledged that they were wrong. In their minds, they were justified in their actions, and I was the one who overreacted. But here's what I want you to know. If you're going through something similar, you deserve to feel beautiful. You deserve to have people in your life who celebrate your happiness, not sabotage it. You deserve to make choices about your own life, even if those choices make other people uncomfortable. And sometimes, standing up for yourself means accepting that some people, even people who are supposed to love you, will never understand or support your growth. That's their loss, not yours. I still have that purple dress, by the way. Rachel let me keep it as a reminder of the night I chose myself over other people's expectations. Sometimes I take it out and look at it, and I remember how it felt to walk into that prom with my head held high, knowing that I had refused to be diminished. That dress represents more than just a prom night. It represents the moment I learned that my worth isn't determined by other people's approval, that my happiness isn't contingent on making everyone else comfortable, and that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is refuse to accept less than you deserve. If you're watching this and you're dealing with people who try to control you, who try to make you feel small, who sabotage your happiness, please know that you're not crazy. You're not overreacting. You deserve better, and it's okay to demand it. And if you're a parent watching this, please remember that your job isn't to control your children. It's to love them, support them, and help them become the best versions of themselves. Your daughter's beauty, success, and happiness should be sources of pride, not threats to your authority. I'd love to hear from you in the comments. Have you ever had to choose between pleasing others and standing up for yourself? How did it turn out? And please, if this story resonated with you, share it with someone who might need to hear it. Sometimes we all need a reminder that we're worth fighting for. Thank you for listening to my story. I hope it helps someone out there realize that they deserve to shine, no matter who tries to dim their light.